A city council retreat, and they say they wanted citizens to know all about it. We're going to show you why that's a lie today. I'm Bunker Bob. This is the Bunker Bob Show. Well, and good afternoon. It is great to be back with you today. Today I have a special guest again on my show. He was on the last show. This is, of course, the Doctor of Finance. That's an honorary degree, I should say, Scott Turnbull. And it is great to have Scott Turnbull with me today. And today we're talking specifically about the so-called council retreat. So, Scott, it is great to have you here. And the reason why you're here is because you actually attended this thing. Is that correct?
Yes. I was even mentioned in Mr. Dahl's Facebook address as being willing to show up and be there the entire day.
Well, that's true. And you know what? So let's... Goodness knows we got to give credit where credit is due. So why don't we let those who are watching hear what Mr. Dahl had to say regarding this retreat, and specifically Mr. Turnbull. So Mr. Dahl, take it away for us.
The word retreat is very misleading. There was nothing retreat or vacationing about it at all. It was definitely a work session. And it was completely open to the public. It was posted with an agenda, so any member of the public could come. It wasn't held in a location that was hard to get to. It was actually held at our city hall where our meetings are at. And instead of us sitting behind the dais, Lisa and the other staff set up a nice sort of round table scenario with the chairs. It was actually pretty nice. We had members of the public come out and watch the participation process of this work session, which was really nice. And actually, I'd like to thank former councilman Scott Turnbull for coming out. He came out and he showed up. Let me take a look here. He showed up just within an hour of us starting, and he was there all day. And he was the only member of the former administration to come out and participate in this process, even if he was just there watching. But it was nice to see that, action speaks louder than words. So it was really, really, really good to have him there. He was asked a couple of questions by the mayor, and was more than happy to participate when he was asked. And I just want to say thank you, Scott, for coming out. Appreciate that we still have at least one member from the former administration that cares about the process and is willing to participate. So thank you very much, sir. I greatly appreciate that. And I also greatly appreciate the other members of the public that came out for this meeting.
Yeah, so, wow, he was sure complimentary of you. And I had no idea that you were able to participate in this. That was kind of news to me.
Well, quite frankly, I don't even remember the mayor asking me any questions, so they must not have been of much significance. But I can tell you that the entire thing was set up to make it uninviting to anybody sitting in the audience. As you can see in the picture, that the audience is behind most of the people, the mayor, the city secretary, and all of the presenters sat with their backs to the audience, which that added or coupled with the fact that they chose not to use the mics and the audio system in the chambers meant that everybody at those tables was talking away from the audience.
Well, and let me, I want to interject here, because I said on my show that I would be going to it and I would be recording or I would be broadcasting if the city didn't. And why didn't I? And I was not there. And the question is, why didn't I show up? Well, I did have client issues going on. But the bottom line is, I wasn't too concerned with it because I knew that the city has this expensive system to broadcast these kinds of proceedings, and it was my understanding that the city had to record it, and I don't think that is actually the law. Now, so I was mistaken, obviously. So I thought, well, at least we'll get a recording of this, but that was also not true. And so I am going to eat some crow and say I did not follow through on what I said I would do, and that is to go and attend that. And that is, and that's about the long and short of it. Is that right?
Yeah, and you'll notice that sitting in the seat in front of me was a duffel bag, which precluded me from actually sitting in the front row of the audience. But also you see that there's an empty chair there, which allows me to actually see Herman and Kippett and Dahl. And the reason for that was the fire chief got up and left because I think he was bored, and so I could actually see right there.
So all right, let me. I'm going to pull this back, and you can you kind of show us where you're talking about the you said there's a bag. There was a bag there, and
yeah, you can see it right there in the picture. It's
okay.
I can't.
You can unhook. There you go. Okay. So show us where.
Well, there's the bag right there in that chair.
Okay.
I took the picture from right here.
Okay, so you were on the second row basically.
Yeah.
Got it. And so this is the image that you basically get from the second row as a citizen of McClendon Chisholm in something that Councilman Dahl wants people to believe that is something that the city council wanted people to participate in, but in fact they made it as hard as possible for citizens to participate as possible. I mean, this was an absolute ruse.
Well, now there's one caveat that I have to say.
All right.
And there's no record of it. It's not mentioned in the draft minutes, but the agenda doesn't state that audience participation will be allowed. And the only way, if it's not on the agenda, the only way anybody would have known was if they were there at the very beginning in the meeting and the mayor made that announcement. Now, if he did, and there was nobody in the
chambers, there was nobody in the chambers at that time,
then common decency and respect would expect him to tell anybody when they entered the chambers that they were allowing participation. Now, I don't mean that he should have stopped whatever was going on, but
well, you were only there 8 hours, so there may not have been time for him to tell you that. Come on now.
Well, there's that, and then you also got to throw in the fact that they opted to do a working lunch. So they brought their little box lunches out and sat there at the table and ate. And anybody in attendance was going to have to miss part of the meeting
if they wanted to go eat lunch.
To go get lunch.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was part of the meeting that I missed.
Yeah. Because
I ran down to the Sonic and grabbed a couple of power bars and drove back up.
Right.
But
yeah. With extra cheese. Got it. Yes. Go ahead.
No, I said power bars.
I know, with extra cheese. I know. Okay. I know what you get at Sonic. Sonic doesn't sell power bars, just so you know.
No, the Shell station that's attached to the Sonic does.
Right, I know.
Okay, so now you're trying to pull my... Okay. I will be more specific in the future.
Yeah, well, okay.
I bought it from the convenience store.
Okay.
Not Sonic.
And we have no record of that, unfortunately. And
actually, I do have a credit card charge.
We can't see it in the picture. I'm sorry. Can't believe you.
Anyway, so when Trudy was talking...
Trudy.
Miss
Trudy
Wosner.
Wosner. Okay.
You couldn't hear.
Well, certainly they had microphones so that you could hear, right?
No, as I said, they opted not to use the microphones and take advantage of the audio system in the chambers so people could hear.
Huh.
Let
me ask you.
The other thing.
Go ahead.
Pull the picture back up from the security camera.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, I don't know if you can see it, but over to the left there is the table that Lisa normally sits at.
Yeah, that's the table to the...
Over here.
Yep.
And my finger is right above the fancy camera that's attached to the $6,000 worth of iCompass software that we purchased so these meetings could be recorded and live streamed. Now, that U could have been turned a quarter turn to the right.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Excuse me, quarter turn counterclockwise. And the opening would have been facing that table. Everybody could have smiled for the camera. And that was the reason given to me when I said, why wasn't it being streamed? And she goes, well, this thing's so touchy, we didn't want to move it.
Wow, that's taxpayer money well spent.
Because they're still trying to get a handle on how to use it. So, turn it around.
I'm going to try to. I'm going to make this picture. Yeah, I'm going to blow this picture up so that you can see it even better than that.
And
so,
pull it up a little bit more because take note that there's a TV monitor there at the opening of the U.
Well, and that's the great thing about the system that they have at City Hall is that if you broadcast on one monitor, it will broadcast throughout on all of the monitors. All you have to do is turn those monitors on. Were those turned on?
A while after.
So while they're talking during session, if that's what you want to do. But the problem is, it really isn't working. I mean, they're not even trying to make that.
They're not utilizing it, but
so it's working. They're just not utilizing it.
Not in the form that you're talking about.
Okay.
Another thing that is important to note: if they had turned that U, right above that desk is a TV monitor.
Yes, that's right.
That they could have seen.
That they could have
everything that was being shown on the one that's normally set right there in front of the dais, like it is.
Yes.
Except, as I said, if you need glasses, that little TV screen, they wouldn't have been able to read it very easily.
Right.
That's the reason they wanted the big one.
Yeah,
but the small one's good enough for Joe Blow citizen. The civilians sitting out in the audience.
Right.
So, between having their backs to us, not using the mics in the audio system, not recording it or live streaming
or live streaming,
they denied everybody except for somebody like myself.
But wait a minute, wait. I'm gonna stop you.
Well, you can stop me.
No. Now, Councilman Dahl said that other citizens were present. Do you have a list of all the citizens that were present for that? How many citizens would you say attended that meeting besides yourself? One citizen. That's it.
She's a lady that lives in Chisholm Crossing 4.
All right, and that's it. So when Mr. Dahl is talking about how important this is for transparency's sake, for citizens to be involved, what I found very interesting is that he berated those in the former administration, I'm assuming he's meaning Adrian Balcom, me perhaps, for not attending. But had we attended, it would have been very difficult for us to have been able to keep up with what was going on, right?
Well, for an Aggie, yeah, probably, but
absolutely. But as far as being transparent and open about this,
it's this was not set up that way. That to use one of your favorite terms, it's definitely a sham.
Yep.
I have another comment that I'll make a little bit later, but they were doing the very minimum to comply with the Open Meetings Act. That's the reason why, and I did not see her take notes.
You're talking about Lisa Palumbo, the city secretary.
So the notes that are in the agenda, and I am sure, because Lisa is a stickler about this, I am sure they meet the open records requirement, Open Meeting Act requirements.
Right.
But those notes were done from memory.
Right. They were not done during the session. Of course, you'll never be able to prove that. The other thing about this image that I was talking about, I said that there were 3 cameras in the chambers, and only apparently after making the request, I said I've only got one image from the back of the room. There are 2 cameras at the front of the room. What happened to those? And that's when Lisa told me, well, I'm so glad that you requested that information, because we learned that the other 2 cameras in the chamber were not working. And so I could have asked for a video. I could have asked for a copy of the video if I wanted to, from the back of the room, I guess. But it's just very, very interesting how things break so easily when things, because had we gotten a different angle, you would have had a much better appreciation for how barren the city council room or the chambers are. And I did ask, by the way, I followed up with Lisa and asked for pictures where you were present or other citizens were present. I have not received those yet. I expect to receive them. I'm sure I will. Lisa is very good about, like you said, she's a stickler for the rules, so she will probably get those to me. But all right, so that's the setup. That's the sham of an open meeting. Now let's talk about what were some issues that were discussed at the meeting that you think were of note. Was there anything?
Well, before we get to that,
okay.
I believe you've got a clip of Mr. Dahl's comment on how important this meeting was.
Yeah, I played it. You want me to play it again?
About if you were ever going to attend a meeting.
That was at the beginning, right?
Not when he was complimenting me. It was
before that. Yes, that was part of that whole clip.
It was after when he complimented me, and before he started talking about the what actually took place in the meeting.
I did not get that.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
Basically, what he said was,
we'll post that.
If and this is a quote, if you wanted to know in detail the operational nuances of our government as far as local government is considered in the city, this was the meeting not to miss.
Wow. This was a not miss meeting.
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And yet, this was such a not miss meeting, and they did as little as possible to hold it and not provide the information to anybody else. If his statement's true, why wasn't the meeting live streamed?
I agree.
And recorded, so the citizens who were unable to attend could watch or listen while they're at work. Well, yeah, beats watching cat videos.
Yep.
Or listen to the recording later when they had time.
Yep.
If it's so important that the citizens learn from what was discussed here, why wasn't it archived?
About him.
Since you brought it up, isn't it interesting that over a year later, there's no antenna on that pole?
That is interesting. That is interesting. Why is that? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Because that is interesting.
Apparently all those suffering T-Mobile customers that the pole was needed to serve must have all been transferred someplace else.
Must have. That's a great point. But we still have citizens that have this monstrosity of a pole sitting out there with nothing on top of it. So it's pretty ironic. That's a good point.
So
where do you want to go from here?
Well, like I said, They didn't make it clear whether or not you could ask questions while things were being said. They didn't record it. And his claim that you and Adrian and other people didn't participate.
Didn't attend.
Well,
yeah.
Which prevented you from participating.
Right.
Okay. Was there. A, yes, because it was interesting to me. I wanted to see what was going on. But B, I'm retired. I could be there. Most everybody else works. So why would they be there? And if it's important that we spent the $6,000 to get the video equipment to record and live stream so that people who couldn't attend evening meetings because they were at their kids' soccer games or at church or whatever, this would seem to be like the most important time to use it, because you're guaranteed the majority of your citizens that you are representing and being a good steward of their money are doing something else.
No question.
So,
no, I agree. Couldn't agree with you more.
Now, as I said earlier, you called it a sham.
Yep.
And I'm going to state that this council is famous for saying that they are for transparency, openness, hearing from the civilians via interactive public hearings and workshops. And that claim is a Texas-sized pile of mature, unaltered, male bovine excrement. And for you Aggies, I'll explain offline.
No, I actually put the I don't think you saw the banner on this show.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so the banner on this show is self-explanatory. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. This wasn't the one thing Dahl said in his opening that is accurate. It was a long meeting, and they covered quite a bit.
Wait. They said no more long meetings. Remember how they?
This is a special meeting.
Oh, that's
it
right.
Was designed
it was a do-nothing meeting. Our long meetings we actually made decisions. We actually got things done. This is the do-nothing meeting. That's right.
Actually, they'll argue that with you, but as I said.
No, because I made all of these bad decisions. Remember, we just...
No, I'm talking about their meeting being a do-nothing meeting, because they did do a couple of things.
Okay, let's talk about that.
But I'm not going to go into most of it. But Mr. Dahl, and I hope that you have this from the end of his recording, where he said that he's going to make sure that there is no pork in next year's budget.
Oh, okay.
The pork's gonna be cut out.
Pork.
Well, apparently Mr. Dahl doesn't know the proper use of the term pork when referring to a budget. Typically, pork involves funding for government programs whose economic or service benefits are concentrated in a particular area, but whose costs are spread among all taxpayers. Public work projects such as taxing all McClendon Chisholm civilians to build a reserve fund earmarked for the repair of Sonoma Verde infrastructure, or perhaps funding national defense spending projects with Raytheon allowing Kippet-level project managers to remain employed are two examples. I believe what Mr. Dahl actually was referring to.
Well, because it means bringing home the bacon. That's why they call it. A congressman goes to Washington, brings home money for his district. Well, every member of council is at large. You're not going to bring home the bacon for the people of McClendon Chisholm? Okay.
Well, there's that, but there's also, he's talking about cutting it out.
Right.
So,
no more benefits, folks. If you're going to be paying, but you're not going to get any benefit.
Okay, but I believe what he should have used was the term FAT, which is another term for discretionary spending, budget line items that you want or would like to have, but are not a necessity. And let's not forget the infamous innocuous placeholders, where you pad the budget just in case you overspend in another area so that overall your budget is still in balance. Now, a couple examples of fat in our budget would be, and this is a hypothetical.
All right.
Last year you budgeted and spent $500 for giveaway ink pens bearing the McClendon Chisholm City logo. You spent, even though you still have 450 ink pens left, you budget another $500 to purchase city logo pens. That's fat in the budget because you don't need them. It's just you stuck it in there, and that can either be, well, we'll put this 500 here, so in case the fire chief spends too much, we got a little bit to help cover up his. But again, it's down on the bottom line that this works out. Or, speaking of the fire chief, possibly when you have two employees doing the work of one, say maybe a fire chief and a operations chief for a department of 6 employees and a handful of volunteers. So
Now that's not happening now, is it?
well, yeah, it is. And by the way,
I was shocked when I heard this.
it is going to be very interesting when they have to explain why the salary expense of the fire department,
The overtime?
is way out of whack.
The overtime?
But I'm not going to go into that today.
That's fine. Okay, but it was surprising because this came out during the retreat. So you've got Chief Simmons, who's doing one job, and then you've got another guy, Captain something, who's doing.
No, he's Operations Chief Murphy.
Murphy. Okay.
He does the day-to-day operations of the fire department.
Okay.
The MCFR fire chief is an administrative position.
Okay.
Manned by a person who, when he took the job, did not know how to open Excel, let alone write a spreadsheet.
You know what's shocking to me about this whole thing, and those of you who are watching, I think it's important that you understand a little context in all of this. This is when we were faced with a McClendon Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department that did not want to be audited. They didn't want to have any accountability, and so they basically said that if we didn't provide for them all of the funding that they had requested, they're just going to walk away. And we said, well, wait a minute, we need to negotiate that, and they said no negotiations. We're not going to be audited. You can't know how we're spending our money. And you're just going to give us what was it, 20% of our budget at that time, and that's where we balked and said, wait a minute, we need to negotiate. They said, no, we're not going to serve you anymore, and so that's when we said, okay, well, then we need to find our own, create our own fire department, because we can't have the tail wagging the dog and be threatened with not having fire safety. Our goal, or our objective there, was to ensure that our city always had fire protection. That was number one as we moved forward to create our own fire department. Correct?
Correct.
So when we found Chief Simmons, he had just been fired from Royce City. No, faked. He was being fired.
No, well,
no, he wasn't being fired.
He
couldn't be fire marshal anymore.
Yes. We hired him to be our city fire marshal.
Yes.
The county commissioners, Judge Sweet and Dennis Bailey,
Commissioner Bailey.
Commissioner Bailey.
Right.
Said that Simmons could no longer serve as the county fire marshal.
Right.
And then when shortly thereafter, Simmons was informed that his request to do outside work while employed with City of Fate had been denied.
Right. And so the reason we were attracted to Chief Simmons was fundamental, because as we looked at what our city needed as far as fire protection, what we were looking at is we would want to pay a fire chief and then have the rest of the fire department volunteer, where we would pay for volunteers. I know that sounds strange, but that's how most volunteer fire departments are run. That's how we were doing it. We were paying
They were
firefighters.
receiving stipends.
Well,
But yes, they're not regular salaried employees. They receive a stipend.
That's correct. So you don't have the health care
Right.
issues. However, if they were going to be a salary employees, then we would have to offer health care as a city.
Only if they were worked over 990 hours.
Correct. So what we were looking at was we wanted to appeal to the neighboring cities, Dallas, Fort Worth, and other cities where all firefighters, they work 1 day on, 2 days off. And so most firefighters have another job. So we knew that we could get experienced firefighters to come in and serve. Plus, we really thought that it was a great thing to have someone like Chief Simmons, because his parents own a fire safety school, right? They're
No, it's a training
academy. Thank you very much.
People who attend his academy end up certified.
That's correct. So in this, we thought, wow, well, this is a great win for the city, because, and when I sat down with the chief or the then possible prospective chief, I basically said, here's what we're trying to do. We want to keep costs down, and we want to try, and we would love to find someone who could train volunteers, people who wanted to volunteer, who would help us and would be able to lead well, who was experienced. We were focused on his experience and his expertise. And so to now find, and that's why we hired him, and to now find out that he doesn't even do that, that was to me the greatest shock of all.
Well,
if he's operation, or you're saying he's what is he?
No, he's
administrative. We have 2 chiefs in a city with 6 firefighters.
Here's the thing: he's administrative, he's fire marshal.
So he gets a paid benefit. That's a paid benefit.
He gets paid for doing the fire marshal work.
Yep.
And he's wanting, and I believe he has attended the training that he needed, since he is a certified law peace officer.
Oh, gosh.
He had a minimal requirement that he had to complete to be able to be code enforcement officer.
Yep.
So
he's got three salaries.
He is trying to morph himself pretty much, well, not away from the fire department, but he's trying to kind of make sure he's got justification for why he's there. But I do believe he's expecting to be compensated for the time he spends as code enforcement.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that he said, let me back up first.
Okay.
One of the reasons that we hired him was because he worked at the city of Heath, and he was there when they built their fire department.
That's right.
And he was involved in that, and then he went to Faith and was involved in helping that one get funded or founded and stood up. So he had experience doing that.
Right.
What he failed to tell us was, in both situations, he was never expected to draft a budget. Their finance people did that for him.
Right.
So when we were sat down and started saying, okay, what's this going to cost? What's this going to cost? He was lost.
Yeah.
And that's where some of the problems came up. I'm not going to go any further into that. Just wanted to bring that up. Mr. Dahl did say in his review of the meeting that the budget going forward, they are going to do a fund for the fire department. In other words, like the utility fund is separate, they're going to separate out the fire department because he didn't like the way that it's a line item under public safety. Well, what Mr. Dahl doesn't recollect is up until September 28th or 29th of 2018, there was only one figure for the fire department.
Right.
It
That's
was
right.
one lump sum.
That's correct.
So this budget that, in fact, when we signed the budget, we didn't have any subcategories under it because it wasn't resolved yet as to how it was going to happen.
Right.
So we put a dollar figure in there and moved forward. So I'm 100% in agreement with Mr. Dahl that needs to be broke out and be much more visible.
Sure.
And the salaries and the costs is going to bear out why that is necessary. Because it's going to be hard to explain why it's necessary to raise taxes to accommodate this want rather than a need.
Yeah. So
Now, go ahead.
So, well, bottom line, I mean, this retreat that they had, they basically it was a lot of education was part of it at the beginning, especially.
Again, I want to say this. It was a good meeting. I do wish that it was recorded so I could see what was said at the first.
Right.
But I also wish it was recorded because at one point I noticed something in the budget and I got up and went back to talk to the chief to find out why certain numbers weren't listed on the budget, which, not surprisingly, he didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And they were out there talking about other subjects, so I missed part of it.
You missed it. Right. And so yeah,
it's really a meeting like this, the need to have it recorded so that people can learn, because they're not going to go back over and explain again, at least probably not until after the next election, what the jobs of a city administrator versus a city manager.
Right.
You know, the difference between home rule and type A general.
Which they could have gotten had they attended one of the TML conferences, the
Sure,
local
but
conferences.
I'm talking about the citizens.
Oh, right. No, the citizens could have known. But again,
that's the thing.
you had to attend. You had to attend.
You had to be
right.
able. You had to show your dedication by
Right.
taking a vacation day.
Yep.
And showing up to work.
Even though they're elected to do that, one of the things they talked about is which I was confused by, the develop council rules of procedure for approval at a future meeting. In the minutes the draft of the minutes that Secretary or City Administrator Paloma was nice enough to send me, she highlights the fact that. Two members of council will review the sample as well as current city policy ordinances and adopting procedures and report back to council with a future recommendation. They're going through all of the ordinances and policies and things like that. One of the things that we did when I was mayor, which is important, but isn't it interesting that they're going to go back through that now? I still don't understand. That why they need a council rules of procedure, because rules of procedure are established by the state of Texas on what you can and cannot do, and Robert's Rules of Order which is, by the way, not my rules of order. I actually have people go, why do they have to follow your rules? And they're not my rules. These are established in the United States military and in the Army by a guy with the last name of Robert, and so. That's where Robert's Rules of Order comes from, but that's how rules of parliamentary procedure are governed or are established. But here, one of the things that I really found interesting was the goal setting and prioritizing of goals. Were you there when they went through that?
I was, but I'd like to.
You want to go back to something else?
No, I don't. We had talked about doing a show
Specifically on each one of these issues?
Well, not
okay.
each one, but spend more time. And
okay, that's a good idea.
We're getting a little long here.
You're right.
So.
You're right. That's a great idea.
But what I do want to mention is two other things.
You need to be my producer. So
yeah, two other things.
Sure. Go ahead. Two more things.
I found it interesting at the end of the meeting they were just discussing tasks to be done early or in the near future. And one of them, and if you remember correctly, we had a council member who was in charge of city website.
Yes. Adrian Balcom. Yes.
And if you remember correctly, everybody was upset that she was in charge.
Yeah, because a city council member should not have charge of a website. Yeah, that's what they
And
that's what they said.
Council member Kippett is in charge of cleaning up the website and having the new website operational by the 1st of September.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
She is working with Administrator Palumba.
Okay.
To do this.
Isn't that great?
So suddenly a city council member messing with the website is okay.
That's leftism for you. That's leftism for you. It's not hypocritical for you. That is leftism. That's hypocrisy is the definition of a leftist. So that's Lorna Kippett is every one of these council members. Every one of them is a leftist. I judge them not by their words but by their actions. Go ahead. What's the second thing?
Okay. Well, the second thing is the warning that Mr. Dahl gave to the members or the residents of Sonoma Verde.
Oh.
That they should be prepared for a increase in their sewer charge. And he explained that this is coming about because we sell, I'm going to use that term, we sell our sewer to Rockwall. Rockwall sells it to North Texas Water District. But in reality,
they sell service to us.
I used the term wrong. I'll
Jim
admit.
Pruitt will give me a call go ahead.
Okay, so we put the sewer into the pipe. It hits Rockwall's pipe, and for that privilege of joining theirs, we pay a fee.
Sonoma Verde, those on that tap, which is owned by the city. Yes.
Yes. So they have to lay new pipe between Rockwall and Rowlett. They've got a big bond issue that they're going to be doing. I believe it's going to be paid by a bond issue. So, of course, anybody using that pipe will be charged with helping to pay for it.
Of course.
And they have already started collecting those monies. But what Mr. Dahl said was, this is the reason why it's not us. We're not raising your sewer. It's because of Rockwall, and they've increased their fee to us. We're simply passing it through. Perfect. That is the way it should be done. However, he then goes on to say, we got to get a handle on this, or the city might be starting to dip into a loss, and he's not for deficit spending. As of the May 31st, 2019 report that he referenced, the city was already $19,136 in the hole. They had collected that much less than what they had paid to Rockwall. Now, when I was preparing for today's show, I went through the June 30th report, and there is, I believe, an error in it. If there's not, this deficit in 1 month jumped from 19,000 to 44,000.
How's that even possible?
Like I said, I think there's an error.
Okay.
I think it's actually jumped up about another $9,000.
Okay.
But still, That's a 30% increase
Yep.
over. And this is what we failed to collect in the past, not what
It's a
rate,
catch-up.
Yeah, that's not a
Right.
rate increase to prevent it from happening again.
Right.
So, if Dahl is serious about not having a deficit, then he's got to go to the voters in McClendon or in Sonoma Verde and say, be prepared. We didn't collect enough in the past. We're going to have to make up for it, and your rates are going up in the future. But you know what he's going to do? He's going to say the rates are going to go up in the future, but this shortfall, we're going to levy that on the citizens. Because he also said that we have, and I can't quote the number, but it's like $11 million of infrastructure, roads, sewer, water lines in Sonoma Verde, that we need to build a reserve for future repairs. Well, we already have $93,000 set aside for exactly that. Part of the PID charge is put for that. But that's not what Mr. Dahl's talking about. Mr. Dahl is saying we've got to go out and let Robert and Scott and, well, even himself pay a few more dollars in taxes for roads that only if we go visit somebody in Sonoma Verde will we ever use. And not to mention, and I know this sounds kind of whiny, but I'm already footing the bill for the roads in my development.
Yep.
You're probably...
As am I. In our development. Yep.
We got to pay for ours.
Yep.
And they're going to want us to help pay for Sonoma Verde because Sonoma Verde was such a great idea to begin with.
Yep. Thank you, Mike Donegan.
Now,
good job.
I got to throw this out, and just for deniability,
yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
How many times have you heard somebody that lives in Sonoma Verde say, I didn't know that the assessment was around?
Oh, yeah.
The salesman lied to me.
All the time. Yep.
I didn't even understand that I had this assessment after I signed the closing documents. Who the hell reads that stack of papers when you sign the closing document?
Yep.
Well, if you're a responsible homeowner, you do.
Right, right.
And if you don't blame yourself, anybody else for you not knowing when the tax bill comes in. But they are looking into requiring that all the builders in Sonoma Verde post in the model home a copy of the PID agreement and the requirements so everybody knows what the assessment will be. So there's nobody can go in there and say, well, the salesman didn't tell me because it was on the wall.
Oh, they'll still say it.
So
they'll still say it.
Of course they will.
Yeah.
But at least that gives the city the deniability of saying, hey, we put it up there. The fact that you didn't read it. That's like, the guy that says, why are you pulling me over for driving 80 in a 35-mile-an-hour zone? Well, didn't you read the speed sign? Well, yeah, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't important.
Right. Yeah, that's the difference between conservatives and liberals, frankly. Liberals want to blame everyone else for, and conservatives say, hey, we're responsible. We'll do what we need to do. And that's what you don't see in a lot of the people who are grousing, and that's why people don't like Adrienne Balcom, frankly, the former council member who's done so much for our city, done so much for Sonoma Verde, frankly, that is her neighborhood, because she's one of those homeowners who goes, look, we signed a paper, we read what we were signing. Why didn't everyone else? And everyone else gets mad at her because they think that that she's being mean and that she's being mean-spirited. But all she's doing is she's being a conservative, and that's what conservatives do whenever confronted with the facts. So. Scott, I thank you again for being on the show and for clarifying some issues, also for attending that meeting. And had you not been there, we would not know even what we know today. And so we'll set up another time to have a more in-depth meeting or discussion related to that meeting so that we can go into specifics. And so I, again, urge you to subscribe to the Bunker Bob Show so that you can be notified whenever I'm doing a show live or that we've done a show so that you can go back and see if it's a show or a topic that you're interested in. And don't forget to email me if you have any comments or questions. Love to hear from those of you who view. So until we see you next time, I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen. This is the Bunker Bob Show, and we'll see you next time for more Straight Talk. Have a great day.